Hello, and welcome to the My Fat Fact podcast. My Fat Fact was created to make your life better by simply making it healthier. We are a team of young health professionals that turn medical literature into the entertaining, the personalized, the 160 character or less Fat Fact. This podcast is designed to analyze the current medical literature in a way that leaves you beyond satiated with the conclusions invaginated into your mind forever, because knowledge is power, and My Fat Fact is powerful knowledge. I am your host, as always, Zachary Conklin, co-founder of this project, general looking good enthusiast, love human excellence, fitness model, cocky, yes, and we limit that as much as we can, but here I am. Hello. Today we are lucky to have an audience on hand, live one, that's going to be shooting us questions maybe as this podcast advances along. So as of now, I will introduce my co-host, as always, the brilliant Cameron Brown, editor-in-chief at My Fat Fact. How you doing today, buddy?
I am doing great. Pleasure as always to be here. Thanks again, obviously, for having me. I'm excited for today. We're back in the lovely town of Seneca Falls, so I'm excited to be back. This is where I've spent the last couple of years. So for those of you that don't know me, like Zach said, I'm currently the editor-in-chief of the website, finishing up my doctorate in chiropractic at New York Chiropractic College here in the lovely town of Seneca Falls. We'll be pursuing my PhD in neurophysiology shortly after that. General strength enthusiast. I'm going to have to give a shout out to Zach's general, I guess, what was it? Good looking enthusiast? That was pretty great. Other than that, we're going to give a shout out today to red wine. Definitely red wine. I think last week was rum and the week before that was scotch. Today's going to be red wine. Absolute pleasure. Really excited to do this. I'll throw this back to Zach. He's going to introduce our guest and we'll get going.
Today's podcast is titled Sexuality and Parenting in 2012. We are lucky to have one of my very good friends, my pseudo-mom here, if you will, at school, Nikki Link. She's gone through it all. I wouldn't even say middle-aged. She's beautiful. She is just a fantastic human being. I'm so happy we were able to put this together with her. And Nikki Link, guys.
Hi, Zach. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm also here in Seneca Falls. I am attending graduate school to become a chiropractor, and I am a lesbian mom.
Lesbian mom. Can we say you're a gay mom?
You can say I'm a gay mom. Yes, I would actually prefer that.
You were the first person to approach me about having a complete gay, lesbian, transvestite, not transvestite, transgender, pardon me, section of the site. Now, this took a lot of, new programming, it took a lot of new thought, and as far as a marketing approach, it was very beneficial for us. I love the gay community. You really brought a new light for me. What was your initiative? What do you bring to the site? What do you bring to My Fat Fact?
I think part of the reason why I wanted you to have this section was because I think that this is a really valuable service. I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's very informative. I think people can learn a lot from it. But people like me tend to look at something that says, oh, if you're a guy, this is how you can do better with your woman. Or if you're a woman, this is how you can do better with your guy. And we're just simply not interested. And I think a lot of really good information would be lost to people like me if you didn't have this niche.
What do we call that? Heterosexism.
Heterosexism is when people basically assume that everyone around them is straight. When I'm walking somewhere with my daughter, people assume that there was a a love interest, romantic man involved in creating my daughter. Not so. When I was in a partnered relationship with a woman and I wore a ring, people assumed that I was married to a man. Not so. And people don't ever, they'll ask about, oh, do you have a boyfriend or a husband? They never say, do you have a girlfriend or a partner, same-sex partner? And it's just the overall assumption that everyone around them is straight.
Remarkable, just to kind of take that point of view. And I would do the same thing. I still do that to this day. I know I write fat facts, and if I'm talking about getting your woman turned on, or how to inspire your lady, it's always kind of that paradigm, and it's hard to kind of refrain from that. But I do now. I'm more cautious, not cautious, but I'm just more aware of it. And I know that we nobody wants to walk around on pins and needles and tiptoeing here or there, not to offend anyone, but it's just being aware that the possibility is there, and it really doesn't matter.
I mean, if you're gonna ask someone, if you're gonna blatantly ask someone about who they're in love with, you should not assume that that's someone of the opposite sex. Rather than saying to a man, oh, do you have a girlfriend or a wife, or would you like to bring your girlfriend or your wife to my function, say, would you like to bring your partner, implying that it could be either male or female.
I have a difficult time sometimes when I say, my partner's coming along. But for me, I mean my partner in business. And I think sometimes people get the impression that I'm bringing my gay partner along, as I am. I think I border the line of metrosexuality, and I really don't care. I love to flirt with the extremes of sexuality, if you will. But Cameron, what about you?
I just kind of wanted to chime in a little bit on that and just ask. I mean, and this stems directly just from myself, but do you think, Nikki, that is more just an issue of people adapting to that and getting used to that, that heterosexism, pardon me, and being able to address people, I guess, properly, or with proper etiquette? Because I say that all the time. When I ask, if I meet someone who is, I see a marriage ring, or I'm inviting them to whatever it may be. I definitely do that myself, but by no means am I anti-gay or homophobe or anything like that. I just don't think I've really been exposed a lot to that, I guess, that nature of things. And so when I ask someone, I don't say, would you like to bring your partner, whether they be man or woman, with you? It's just kind of instinct in me. So I guess, do you think that heterosexism is more, that will come with time? Or do you really think people are being ignorant still? And, we should be aware of it. And obviously the gay population is, outspoken. It's there. We know it's not, there's no more kind of really, hiding this. And obviously there's a lot of, kind of progressive work to be done. But yeah, I guess my general question is, do you think that really, do you think at this point in time, it is ignorance? If I ask a question like that, or I phrase something like that, do you think that's ignorance on my part? Or do you think that maybe that comes with time?
I'm not sure it's ignorance as much as it's exposure. People who have close family members and friends who are gay will address them as, do you and your partner, you and your spouse, you and your significant other, because they have the language. I think most people don't think about using that language. They think about using the language that their parents use, that they heard growing up, that they hear on the radio, whatever. I think it's all about exposure. The numbers of people who have people close to them who identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgendered, any of the above, are increasing because more people are coming out. And I think that as it becomes more visible, more people will think about the language. I think no one's thought about it before because they've not had to.
Do you think that more and more people are coming out because it's becoming more and more socially acceptable? Or do you think that because more and more gay people are coming out, more and more people feel that they can be gay? I mean,
I don't think that. I think that the number of people who identify as gay in their hearts has never changed since the beginning of time. I think there is X amount of population that has always identified as lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgendered. I do think that socially, it's more, people are more aware of it. It's more acceptable. I was at the New York State Fair last week, and I noticed that there were at least 6 same-sex couples that were holding hands at a venue where there were probably 30,000 people around them, and I had never seen that before. I've been to the State Fair every year for the last 45 years, and this is the first time that I've seen it, and I saw it in multiples. I think there's more people who are aware of bullying, who would stand up for people who may be being bullied. I think that there are less people who may think about bullying, less people who are offended by it. I just think that the same amount of people are gay, but it's easier for them to come out now. Kids are coming out younger and younger all the time.
Yeah. I mean, if it's more socially acceptable, I think people are more willing to just live their lives the way they feel, right?
Exactly.
It's the feeling of transparency, true integrity. I know that Mark Zuckerberg would be a fan if I said that transparency equals integrity. You are the same person to your patient, you're the same person to your friends as you are your family, and you are who you are.
I can feel the tension in this room right now. I'm just going to throw that out there for our listeners. It is heated in here. This is good stuff. Anyways, I just want to touch quickly on what Nikki said earlier. Just for our listeners out there, I will at the end be going over some of the scientific and some of the research behind this right now, because I know one thing that rang true right when you just said that, Nikki, was I think correct me if I'm wrong, what the quote was, like a lot of people have known they were gay, I guess, and just in contrast to what Zach's question was, that they've known they're gay and they're coming out. It's not now that it's acceptable. More people are becoming gay, but more people are coming out.
More
so they
people
already
are
were
acknowledging that
right.
they're gay,
so they are
rather
gay
than
to
trying
begin
to
with.
hide it.
Right, exactly. So I'm going to touch on that, and I'll touch on the science a little bit later in some of the research I came across. But that was a great point, and I like that topic.
Yeah, so let's get into this a little bit. Part of our section in our database is called LGBTQA. It's a mouthful, but it is an acronym. And what does that acronym stand for, Nikki?
That's lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgendered, queer or questioning, and ally.
That is a mouthful.
So, allied, I guess that's where I would fall, because I proclaim myself to be straight. I guess
right,
that's
a straight person who is aware of the struggles that LGBT people experience and is they're on our side, so to speak. Help us get equal rights, equal marriage, basically equal citizenship in this country.
Real quick, I'm going to ask this. Do you think that segregation, we've had it with black versus white, it exists, it does exist everywhere, and still to this day, I do believe that it's general ignorance. There's no place for it. I mean, if you're going to segregate based on a look, you're judging the book by the cover. You're just excluding yourself. You're putting up a wall. Do you think that the same thing applies here with homophobia? It's basically what it is, isn't it? Is the segregation a phobia?
I'm not sure what you mean by segregation. I feel like
the hatred. Like, why do LGBTQA or LGBT people not have federal rights, not have federal privileges such as tax breaks, such as...
A lot of it is fear. There's the whole religious aspect of it, where people pull out sections of the Bible that they feel they can stand on and say that being gay or lesbian is wrong. It's against the Bible. God doesn't want it that way. It's all about, a lot of it is religious interpretation. I don't have any statistics, but I can tell you just by experience and life experience, as well as reading experience, that most of the gay bashing that happens in this country has a religious foundation. It's because God told me that fags are bad and I need to get rid of them. It's because God said that this is wrong, so I don't want you to be part of my society or in my neighborhood.
Now, I'm going to interject just for a brief second here, just because I got to get off my chest. I'm not a religious person really at all myself.
Really, Cam? I never would have guessed.
I'm probably going to take some flack for this later on, but I got to put this out there. I'm personally, as a researcher, I'm sick and tired of the whole religious argument behind everything, behind, cultural hatred, whether it's sexual orientation hatred. It's getting absolutely ridiculous.
I agree.
And again, I'm probably going to get blasted for this, but I'll throw it out there. You believe in a talking burning bush or a talking snake or whatever it was in that passage, or I keep hearing this, and I think we've got some audience members shaking their head at me, which is fine. And I think really a lot of it just, and again, I don't know a lot about it. I don't study theology or anything like that, or religion as a whole, but some of the stuff that you read in the Bible and that you read in some of these passages, it blows me away as a scientist as a whole, that I can't believe you can stand on it and hate other people because of it. And I'm going to touch on some of the research behind this later, some of the epigenetics and the genetic cellular biology behind some of this, and hopefully lay a little bit of it to rest for some of our more educated readers. But I know the ignorance is probably going to continue, and I'll be on the message board to deal with this when it happens, but I had to interject there a little bit, so continue, sorry.
I think that, unfortunately, maybe it's just me being prejudiced and me having my own experiences, but it seems like religion is behind a lot of struggles that I face. There are a lot of religions who have come around who openly accept gay people, ordain gay ministers, whatever. There are still a lot that do not. As far as the whole marriage thing and religion, there are 1,138 federal rights and responsibilities that come with federal marriage. There are states now where gay marriage is legal, but it's on a state level, and you get all the state rights and responsibilities, but there's still that 1,138 federal rights and responsibilities that you don't get. And the majority of again, I'm speaking just as myself, I don't want a pew in your church. I'm more than happy to get married by a justice of the peace in a courthouse. I'm not looking to invade your religion. I'm not looking to change what you think. I'm not looking to make you marry me if that's not what you feel. What I want is to be a full citizen and have equal rights in my country that everyone else has with federal marriage.
Well, well said there. I will get married if I ever do get married, by a justice and peace. I will not get married in a church. I have little to do with religion and myself. I understand to the best of my ability where it is derived from and the questions it does answer, and faith. Faith is good to have, and I don't hate on any religion by any means, and nor do I speak on the entire gay community myself. I am just speaking of myself and my experiences and my education.
Zach, I'm sorry, I got to interrupt you for 1 second. You just said, I don't hate on any religion. I really, 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 really wish that no religion would hate on me.
Yeah, exactly. Isn't it kind of paradoxical that they teach non-hatred, but it seems to come out? I mean, how many wars, how much hatred has been formed from religion?
Lots.
Yeah. We'll move on from that, but I guess on a lighter note, did you always know that you were a lesbian?
I think I always did know. As far back as maybe 4 or 5 years old, I can remember pretty much knowing two things: that I wanted to be a mom, and that I liked girls like it seemed other girls talked about boys. I had a great mom. I have a great mom, so I had a really great model for that. But back when I was young, there were no Ellen DeGeneres or Greg Louganis or Melissa Etheridge or anyone on television or radio or anything like that who were out. So I didn't even have words at 5 years old. I knew what a mom was because I had one, but I didn't know what being gay was.
Who's Melissa Etheridge?
Thanks. Am I dating myself?
Jesus.
Thanks.
I had to. I'm sorry.
So I probably knew before 5, but I really can remember back to about 5.
So you think this is absolutely something that was completely inherent to your nature?
Absolutely. Most of the people that I know who are gay had straight parents, so it wasn't like we learned it from our parents, and it's not something that you would, maybe today, but not when I was a kid. I'm 48, so, back in the 60s and 70s, it wasn't something that you would have chosen because it wasn't something that you saw or had I didn't even have words for it, and I knew that I was.
That is remarkable. I think that as culture becomes more and more accepting of people being people, I've always kind of believed that 90% of the population is 10% gay. As I went to college,
90% of the straight population.
You correct me, but you're right. 90% of the proclaimed straight population is 10% gay. And I know that you dudes out there listening right now, and if you're listening with a few buddies, you laugh and chuckle at that and say, no fucking way, that's bullshit, and you guys laugh and carry on. But if you're to listen to yourself, and the human mind is far too complex not to entertain thoughts of homosexuality. I'm sorry to enlighten you, but you are already enlightened with that. And deep down, we all know, and it's, a couple years ago, if I were to sit here and tell you that I would be openly saying this on a podcast that was open to the entire world, I'd say you're full of shit. But it is what it is, and I don't. At this point in my life, I really don't care, and I am part of that 90%, and I'm fine with it, and I feel more comfortable and open, and I think that's where people who are okay with gay rights, just culture in general, can appreciate it and just take it for what it is. And I think
this came from the audience, but again, the whole transparency thing is absolutely essential. And again, great point from the audience.
I think, Zach, it has a lot to do with social stigma too, especially for guys. It's always been the ultimate insult for a man to be compared to a woman. You're a sissy boy, you're a fag, you're a girl, you're whatever. That's always been the ultimate insult. And even though there are many, many, many men who are very macho who identify as gay or bisexual, I think that it's still, even today, is one of the ultimate insults to a man to be feminine or be compared to someone female. So to identify as a gay man, or even the 10% of straight men who have gay tendencies, 10% gay tendencies, I think you have to be really secure with yourself to even admit that. Otherwise, like you said, if you're sitting in a room with 5 of if you're a guy out there sitting in a room with 5 of your buddies, you're certainly not going to admit to that, because the ultimate bad thing for a guy to be is feminine. Yeah,
absolutely. To be feminine is not necessarily to be gay, and they're not mutually exclusive. They are mutually exclusive, pardon me. I dove in high school. I loved diving. It is feminine. It's the grace of a woman, but the strength of a man. You do see a lot of gay men that are phenomenal at diving and at gymnastics because they can combine the two.
I'm chuckling here, but that did sound feminine. And that we're gonna, I'm probably again gonna get blasted on the stereotype on that.
It's at 10% coming up.
There you go. It did sound feminine. Again, I'm just trying to cut the air. Jeez, it is tense in here. We are going at this. All right, continue. Sorry,
Cam. I don't know. I don't really feel the tenseness. I feel fine.
Maybe it's me. Sorry. It's that 10% again.
It's the wine.
Cam, I would hardly say that you're part of the 10%. I'm sorry, but. Diving. I mean, what more I remember, you walk down the board and you feel like a girl. When you do something good, it's like, man, that was graceful. That was elegant. But again, I've never slept with a man, nor do I have desire to. And the thing that I think that makes me know that I'm really not gay is that I don't want to make out with a guy. The intimacy thing is that's far from belief. But Nikki, have you ever slept with a man?
I actually have slept with 2 men, even though I came out when I was 17. One of them was a bet. When I came out to my best friend, she started asking me questions about, well, aren't you curious about sleeping with a guy? Don't you want to be with a guy? And so I turned everything around with her. When she said, aren't you curious about having sex with a guy? I said, well, aren't you curious about having sex with a woman? She said, well, don't you ever want to be with a guy? I said, well, don't you ever want to be with a woman? So we made a pact that if she ever slept with a woman, I had to sleep with a guy. And if I ever slept with a guy...
Is there any way I can... also partake in this bet, or how does this work?
It's a long time ago bet. Sorry, it's over.
All right. Thought I'd check.
Anyway, if she ever slept with a woman, I had to sleep with a guy, and if I ever slept with a guy, she had to sleep with a woman. And she called me up at about 5 o'clock in the morning one time and said that she was at one of my gay friends' homes who had had a wicked crush on her for about 4 years. And I said, how long have you been there? And she said about 6 hours. And I was like, oh, shit. So I happened to go with her to her boyfriend's house to spend the weekend a few weeks later, and her boyfriend had a male roommate. So it was like the setup was like right from the very beginning. It's not...
if Quentin Tarantino is listening, this is beautiful stuff for a script. I don't know if anyone else is taking this, but sorry, continue.
And real life, true. Sleeping with a man is not a bad thing. I mean, physiology is physiology. What feels good feels good. It's not about that. It's
that hurt.
Sorry.
That hurt.
It's just the intimacy. I feel much more intimacy with a woman. I feel like a woman knows me better. I feel like I know her better. It's the intimacy. And again, it was pleasurable to sleep with the men that I slept with, but not something that I would have wanted to do more than the one time each.
Great. Good stuff. You do have a daughter.
I do.
Let's get to the topic matter at hand. She's 16.
She is.
I've seen her. I've met her. She's a beautiful sweetheart. I mean, awesome
Great
awesome
kid,
human
the best.
being. Tell me about how you got pregnant. I mean, 2 vaginas in one bed don't equal procreation. According to my math, I don't know.
Well, it was the 90s, and the thing to do when 2 women are looking to get pregnant is to check the internet. So that's where we went, to the internet, and we found The internet. We found a couple of sperm banks, and we checked it out. And I'm the kind of person that I have to have, I'm a little bit rigid sometimes. Not with everything, but with this I was very rigid. And I had a list. We had a list of all the things that we wanted in our donor period. And we looked...
The list didn't start with Cameron Brown.
It did not start with Cameron Brown.
Again,
sorry. Nor did it start with Zachary. Sorry.
Come on,
anyway.
my ginger hair. Isn't the quality we all want?
Anyway, we looked online, and the only thing they tell you, at least back then, about your donor was the hair color, eye color, blood type, interests, and because they're usually college guys that donate their major. None of those things were on our list.
I like that.
It was great. So I happened to, whether it was fate or whichever way it went, I don't know, but I woke up one morning and realized that the list that we had was a very good friend of mine that I worked with. He was a gay man, and so my partner and I approached him, and we talked to him, and he thought that we would be excellent parents, and he was more than willing to donate. So we did the whole donation thing, and we did think about having sex and doing it the old-fashioned way, but we were both gay. Ew. Didn't work. We didn't want to do that, so we did the artificial insemination thing.
This story would have been way more interesting if the ew part was left out and you guys actually went at it the old-fashioned way. But again, this is just that 10% talking. Sorry, guys.
That was a very heterosexist comment, Cam.
Yes.
Yeah, I got one.
Pardon me, but was a turkey baster involved?
No turkey baster. No, I was not even going there. That was way too much of a stereotype for me. No.
Okay, I guess we'll leave that for the imagination.
Yes.
But do you think your daughter's 16 right now? She does proclaim herself to be heterosexual? She
does, and it's really funny. I have a funny story about when she was about 10 or 11 years old. I had asked her about the boys that she went to school with. I was trying to feel out how she was, approaching this whole sexuality thing. And I said, are there any boys that you are interested in or any boys that you think are cute? And she's like, Mom. And I said, what? She's like, well, that was a really I think at
called
10
you out.
actually called me a heterosexist and said that she wasn't really sure if she was going to like boys or girls yet. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay. So anyway, that was my daughter at 10. I felt like a really good parent at that moment. Anyway, she is straight. She does like boys. She has made up her mind. So that's... I mean, I had straight parents and I'm gay.
Right. The whole made up your mind thing, that kind of, it goes against some science and it goes against some origins of homo and heterosexuality, I guess, a little bit, to consciously make up your own mind about your sexual orientation. Do you really think that she had to make up her mind? Do you think she has the potential or the propensity to be both sides of the fence?
I think maybe, like you said, at least 10%, at least 90% of the population is 10% gay, and I think that what a great parent I was, tooting my own horn for letting her feel comfortable enough to make that decision and explore all sides of it.
Yeah, it really sounds like she really is just comfortable, and like I didn't graduate to that thought until I was about 23, away from my parents and father, and you know that the whole generation above us, or between 40 and
my generation,
yeah, is
Melissa Etheridge
is quick to judge, and I remember being in high school thinking that gay people, oh my God, and it was basically just replicating my father and what he had taught, until I experienced the world on my own and decided that I was going to be comfortable with my own thoughts.
Kind of like politics.
Yeah. Except I don't have any financial incentive, only just myself and this team here. But does your daughter ever get bullied, or does she ever come home crying from having two moms, or...
No, my daughter has never had a bad experience. I will say that when she was younger, she told everybody that she had two moms. She did the pictures at school of her two moms, and she did 2 Mother's Day cards, and she talked about having 2 moms. And that was really cool until she and her friends got to the age where having 2 moms implied that your 2 moms were lesbians. And then she wasn't quite as open about it. She doesn't hide it. She marches in pride parades with me. She hopefully will do a future podcast with you. She does not hide it, but it's not the first thing that she tells everyone either, like it used to be when having 2 moms didn't imply that those moms were sleeping together.
Amazing.
I gotta ask you a quick question on that. And do you think there will come a time, though, where, that child, and again, we're talking about your daughter, and I don't mean this in a broad sense or to kind of dilute the situation, but do you think there will come a time where, it will be openly accepted, and that, your daughter or someone like her will be able to, in school, completely be totally okay with the fact that she's got 2, gay mothers or lesbian mothers, however, you want me to refer to that, and she won't have to hide that? Because it sounds like, just by your description there, and correct me if I'm wrong, but she is still somewhat hesitant in being completely open with it, whereas obviously at the start she wasn't. And then when kids start kind of developing opinions and getting a little, for lack of a better word, mean, she kind of reverted maybe a little back to suppressing that. Do you think there will come a time where that will actually change, or do you think that's just human nature?
I think that it depends on the situation. When we belong to a group called Pride and Joy Families, which is an international group with LGBT parents, and it's a chance for kids with LGBT parents to get together and not have to explain that they have 2 moms or 2 dads. It's just assumed that they have 2 moms or 2 dads, or that their one or more of their parents are transgendered. And it is a place where they can be totally open about it, and they don't even need to talk about it. I'm not sure that she's hiding it. I think it's just not an important thing. She talks about Mommy Nikki, and she talks about Mommy, her other mom's name. I don't want to bring her into this, but she talks to her friends and refers to both of us. So I think that it depends on where she is. If she went to a Catholic high school, again, I'm sorry to pull religion into this, but I believe if she went to a Catholic high school, that she would feel more like she had to hide it.
Absolutely. I
think now it's just a non-entity.
I think just the development of sexuality and knowing what sex is.
Exactly. You don't want to think about your parents having sex, period.
It's dependent on age. You're going to develop into knowing what sex is. Kids at 6 years old don't understand what sex is, so how can they decide that lesbian and same-sex parenting is mutually exclusive? They cannot. And I think that it doesn't develop into the teenage years where you decide that, okay, well, I have two moms, but, okay, they're lesbian. Are they lesbian? I'm going to guess that most of the time that's the case, but I think to have two mothers doesn't necessarily mean that both moms are intimate with each other. Can you agree with that?
Well, I think most of the time it does. I think you have like maybe two divorced women who have moved into a house together, and they each have brought their children into it, but they don't typically call the other woman mom as well as their own mother.
Right.
When you're talking about a mom and a dad, that implies two parents taking care of that child who has a mom and a dad. When you're talking about a mom and a female roommate, that implies a mom and a female roommate. When you're talking about two moms, it's like having a mom and a dad. It's the two people who are responsible for you in this world.
That was really well said. Cameron, do you have any scientific literature on any of these comments stated from above?
I always have scientific literature first and foremost. Yeah, I mean, if we're gonna, what I'll do is I'll at least give our readers kind of a brief history here, and hopefully I can accurately detail this. I haven't had a lot of time to dig into the literature as I typically do, but where a lot of the science actually started in 1993, where Dean Hammer and his group from the National Institute of Health in Bethesda, Maryland, published an article in the journal Science, and it was basically they did a pedigree analysis, and it was about 114 families of homosexual men. So this is kind of specific literature, and a lot of literature that I've seen, that I've come across, and again, I haven't had a large amount of time to come across or to at least delve into this even further, is all about homosexual men. So, I know we're speaking with Nikki today, who, is obviously lesbian. We're talking on the other side, homosexual men here. So, science-wise, what they came up with was a DNA analysis of the group that they analyzed, and they came up basically with a region of the X chromosome. It was the XQ28 region. I know that probably means nothing to a lot of our listeners out there, but it's not a gene. It's not a specific gene as far as I know, but it's more a region of the X chromosome, and they definitely came up with the fact that after analyzing the data that there was a significant percent of the population that definitely were correlated with this region of the gene, or with this region of the X chromosome. And there has been a ton of science to follow this up. So that's where it really started with Dean Hammer's group in 1993. And there are T-shirts out there now. There is everything. This has kind of turned into a social media melee of, I saw a T-shirt the other day. I think that was, it had the gene on. I think it was XQ28, and then it was thanks mom for the gene or something like that. And it was obviously a gay pride type advertisement.
Cameron, tell me about the literature you read about how men, if they are, say, the fourth born male in a family, how that affects their sexuality as they develop.
So that's a great question. That was actually some really good stuff out of Italy. And there was a group out of Italy. Basically, they kind of addressed the whole Darwinian paradox of what's going on right now. Because a lot of the science behind this is people arguing it's impossible for people to be gay because, according to Darwinian evolution and natural selection, gays don't reproduce, and therefore they'd be eliminated from the population. That's the main argument. So,
yeah, but okay. We all can probably agree that human beings are kind of overpopulated in this sense. Do you think that this is nature's way of dealing with overpopulation?
I just read an article recently about animals, bisexuality and homosexuality in animals, and the whole thing is kind of Darwinian in that there are many species of animals who have homosexual partners for life, gay partners for life in the animal kingdom. The black swan, they're about a quarter of them have homosexual partners for life. If there are two men, a single female will deposit an egg in a nest for them. There was just a couple of years ago, there was a book called "And Tango Makes Three" by Peter Parnell and Justin Richardson B. It's a true story of two penguins at a New York zoo who they gave them an egg because they were life partners, and they raised the egg and raised the penguin to full adulthood as a family. And I think it is kind of a natural selection thing. They're saying that is keeping a lot of the animal population from being overpopulated and from taking over and messing up the ecosystem.
I've read everything you've referenced there, and you're completely right. And I mean, your paradigm is completely right. And that was where I was going with that whole thing. And that's just kind of the argument behind a lot of, I guess, the pseudoscience behind it's impossible to be gay, or it's not genetically, plausible. It doesn't benefit the species, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, no, everything you've quoted is right. I've read those. I remember the penguin story was really good. I remember reading that. That was actually pretty well done. And a couple of PhDs behind a lot of that. I believe one guy was at the University of Washington. Really well done. Anyways, I digress. But the stuff out of Italy was, and they were kind of confirming some other stuff. And a lot of what comes down to the epigenetics and the genetics of this study is it's not that simple. A lot of people think that Darwinian thought and that natural evolution is really that straightforward, where it's really not. And they've kind of shown that in a lot of science. There is a lot of I forget even what it was, what I was reading earlier, but it was, there are a ton of genetic or naturally selected mechanisms where a species basically almost not inhibits but competes with themselves based on genetic selection. And some of these, predisposed, I guess, homosexual genetic selections that they're kind of trying to isolate right now, they may decrease fertility or decrease fitness is, I guess, the proper term biologically or ecologically. But in the long term, they may benefit the species. So that was kind of one of the main things I touched on. That group out of Italy that Zach was talking about, I'll try and wrap this up real quick, was one of the hypotheses behind this was just basically that it has to benefit the species in some way. Somehow people have to, the species has to get better at that. But go ahead.
I think that the way I interpret Darwinism or natural selection is that this gene, if you will, I guess, is a good thing for the overpopulated species. I would think that naturally, out of overpopulation, something would be there to regulate the reproduction.
That's a great point, and I know that's an argument, and some of the scientific community is still touching on that. But one thing, I can almost clear the air here with one statement, and that is this. We've come to the point in genetic research and genetic technology and everything we know right now about cellular biology. We've come to the point now where we know that epigenetics, and that is basically just a term for above the genome itself or environmental influence on the genome, it is not that simple. People used to think there was a gay gene, that XQ28 gene we talked about. There might be a gene related to it, but again, it's not that simple. There really isn't a gay gene. There are multiple genes which predispose a species to mating or to having sexual preference with, one sex or the other. It really doesn't come down to the fact that, you've been born with the gay gene, you're going to be gay. No, they've shown now in science, and it has a lot to do with everything. There is some serotonin research out there between, gene mutation. We have a good question from the audience. Gene mutation. I'll touch on that. I will touch on that. Anyways, there is some research all over the place. Hypothalamic research on, different development of the hypothalamus. There is an area of the hypothalamus, I think it was the SDC or sexual dimorphic sexually dimorphic nucleus. There's tons of stuff. And one of the other things I actually want to touch on for most people here, there is a journal, an academic journal called the Journal of Homosexuality. So I just want to point that out to a lot of our lay listeners out there. There is an entire journal, academic, peer-reviewed, dedicated to this topic. Now, there isn't a journal on, mind reading or, and again, I'm probably going to get blasted for that one from somebody, but, the peer-reviewed journals don't just pop up out of nowhere typically and start debating topics that really don't exist. But there is an entire journal. There's tons of research. There is a group out of the University of Liège, Belgium, Dr. Balazar and her colleagues in the neuroscience department reviewing a significant pool of data on prenatal endocrinology. They've even shown that, prenatally, a lot of these babies are exposed to some things that are, I don't want to say normal, but they're different than, your typical endocrinology. And again, there could be an evolutionary or genetic basis to this. So, I'm rambling here, and I'm probably boring our listeners. But bottom line, there is a large pool of evidence out there right now, at least just linking a genetic tie to this. No, there isn't a gene. There's not one gene that turns on or off and makes people gay or not gay. That's absolutely ridiculous. We've kind of proven that. But at the same time, there are a pool of genes or a pool of neurotransmitters, bottom line, or however the interaction does occur in the forebrain, in the midbrain, that it definitely predisposes people to environmental factors, which then lead them to maybe down that pathway of being homosexual or gay in nature. So
the propensity to be gay.
Right.
Nikki, thoughts on that?
I just wanted to go back to one thing that was brought up, I think, by the audience and by Cam about the procreation thing. It's a huge argument from the religious right that gay people should not be allowed to marry because it will kill off the human species because there will be no procreation. Well, it's my opinion. Does that mean that, like, older people, like women who've gone through menopause, or people who can't have children because of a childhood illness or just born sterile or whatever, shouldn't get married? It's a huge argument that the religious right uses, thinking that the entire population is going to die out. Exactly.
Scientifically, that's absolutely ridiculous. And I'm tired of hearing it. It's scientifically absolutely implausible. It is ridiculous.
If anything, the male species is dying out. The X chromosome is getting weaker. That's for another entirely podcast.
Chivalry and manhood is dying out. And I think that's what Zach's touching on there. And that is true. Yeah, we're dying out as real men, period. Let alone gay or straight. That's just men and having manners. We're dying out.
Yeah, and you can look that up for your own. Maybe we'll have a podcast that on later next year. But how does your daughter feel about you and your mother, or you and her other mother's divorce? Do you feel that she experiences the same emotions as two straight parents?
I think exactly the same emotions. To her, it's exactly like if mom were to move out with a kid, or dad were to move out and leave mom with the kid, whatever. She had two parents. We all lived in the same house. We all did things together. And then all of a sudden, she still had two parents, but we lived in a different house. It was different. Kids don't like change. No kid likes change. Most adults don't like change. So she hated it. But I think for me, I woke up one day and I saw that my partner and I could be in the same house for 8 hours and not say two words to each other. And we were hardly ever in the same room together. And I just looked at the floor one day with my daughter sitting on it playing, and I thought, this is not what I want my daughter to think a healthy, happy relationship is. This is not the model that I want for her. And I'm not happy. Therefore, the next morning, I decided that we were going to leave. And I think it affected her the same exact way that it affects kids from straight homes. My parents aren't together anymore, and I hate it because I love them both, but they adjust.
Well said. I think you're absolutely right there. Do you know what the exact absolute divorce rate is amongst LGBTQ population?
That is a great topic, Zach. No, and I'll tell you why. Because heretofore, the only statistics that are kept on divorce are kept because marriages are dissolved. And because gay people couldn't get married, there was no statistics on their divorces. There's a lot of people who will say, "Oh, gay people are provocative and they sleep with a lot of people and they don't have long-term relationships." But my question to them is, how do you know, since there really have never been any statistics kept on that, because there has been no legal marriage, therefore no legal divorce.
I'm going to chime in real quick on that, and I'm going to keep this brief, but there are no stats on that, and you're right when you say that. And again, one of the things that drives me absolutely up the wall with a lot of lay people or lay press or whatever is the fact that they make these claims and there is no data, or there's some just absolutely piss poorly done study on it that they quote, and there is no data on, kids who are raised by gay parents or whatever you want to look, and it being negative. There are no negative correlations right now. As far as if anyone's got the research, please send it to me. I've spent hours digging, so I'm just going to give you a little research there. But
the only thing I have is gay marriage is legal in Vermont, and in 2010, the straight divorce rate in Vermont was 3.8%. And the LGBT divorce rate was 0.3%. Now, I understand that that's probably way skewed because gays have not had marriage very long in any state. And when gay marriage came about, there were a lot of couples who had been together for 5, 10, 20, 30, 50 years, and then they could have the right to marry. So they're pretty established, they're older, they're more mature, their relationships have already endured a lot. But that's the only stat that I could really find.
To bring us back to our fat fact that states think being gay is unnatural, nature says not. There are over 450 documented reports of gay animals, species, and possibly over 1,000 undocumented reports about gay creatures. Do you have any specific examples for us?
The stuff that I found said that there's no species that's been studied extensively that homosexuality has not been found in, except ones that don't have sex. Baboons, whales, manatees, apes, crabs, worms, birds, lions, dolphins. We already talked about the black swans and the penguins. To my knowledge, the animal that's closest link to us as far as DNA as the dwarf chimpanzee is 100% bisexual.
That, just let that sink in a little bit. I think that is pretty remarkable after this conversation. I don't even know where to go with that. Really though?
I'm gonna just at least put my 2 cents in on this, just because it's obviously the research department. But I've read a couple of those. I've definitely read a couple of those. I'm not discrediting any of the studies whatsoever. A lot of that is epidemiological or sociological data that's observational in nature. There's a lot of confounding variables in that. Now, I've read some of it that seems very convincing, and I'm not it's not like I'm disbelieving it, but
well, and I'm not a research expert, so
it's not a very sturdy leg to stand on, I guess, from a scientific standpoint. That's all I'm going to say is. But again, I've always said this, and I've learned this earlier on in kind of in my research career. But where there's smoke, there typically is fire. So a lot of these studies, although they may not be, they're not 100%. They're observational. They're epidemiological. Blah.
Dude, I mean, if a male monkey's humping a male monkey, and he's going over and he's humping his wife too at the same time, that sounds like bisexual. That sounds.
I agree with that. Just you're not tracking all the male monkeys in the population, so you really don't know what number of them are doing that or what they're not. And there's just a lot of confounding variables. But I totally get that. And again, that's why I'm saying, where there's smoke, there's typically fire. And I'm not debating some of those PhD studies that have been done. I respect a lot of the guys have done. I've read a lot of their work. They're pretty good. But
okay, so for some of you more religious type, where did the first gay person come from if Adam and Eve were straight? I know.
I don't. I'm not an expert. I'm not a research person. I can't tell you that. I do know that there are
First and foremost, I'm going to jump in on that myself.
Well, you know what? There's BC cave.
I mean, first and foremost,
drawings.
Adam and Eve are a construct of the Bible.
Yeah, and there are BC cave drawings that show two men together and two women together. So I don't, where do you want to go with that?
They're again. Yeah, I got to take not almost offense to that, but from a scientific standpoint, that's a tough question to answer because, again, Adam and Eve, A, they're a construct of the Bible, and B, if Adam and Eve are real, someone, poof, made them stand there. So, again, I'd like to see the science behind that poof. But beyond that, again, genetics has evolved, species have evolved. There's and if we're arguing from Adam and Eve on, then we're arguing from the onset of, I guess, time, or however you religious people want to look at it. But again, the documentation of gay animals it's well documented. I hate to tell you that.
People.
So
there's cave drawings.
No, but that's the argument behind that. Gay people don't exist, and it's a bad decision. Blah blah. I'm just talking. So you want to talk about biological entities who don't even have a frontal cortex capable of making decisions based on right or wrong or based on whatever. They're just driven by their midbrain or their hindbrain and what really drives them to reproduce or whatever. It doesn't matter. It exists in nature. Yeah. So, again, that's just a silly argument. And I haven't had a long time to dissect the literature on this, but I welcome anyone and everyone onto the, who's listening to the podcast, come onto the, onto the forum that we're going to have on the myfatfact.com website. I'll debate you till I'm blue in the face because I realistically haven't seen anything good, nor have seen anything reputable discounting a lot of these theories. So bring it.
Yeah, tonight was definitely emotionally provoking. Nikki, do you have anything else to add on this topic?
No, I'll just thank you guys for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, this was definitely an experience. I learned a lot. Definitely open, and again, the whole transparency quotient. I think we're reaching a solid whole number here. So, Cam, do you have anything else?
Yep. I just personally would like to really thank Nikki for coming out. I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much for opening up with us. Sharing a lot of personal stuff with us. I'd like to thank our studio audience for being here as well and for supplying some of those awesome questions. And absolute pleasure. Great subject matter. We'll definitely be touching on this again. And I'll send this back to Zach to let us off.
Yeah, guys, and thank you. On behalf of the myfatfact team, I would like to thank you for tuning into this podcast. I hope that you all can walk away from this a little bit smarter and subsequently a little bit healthier. Tune into next week's podcast on a little less emotionally provocative topic, Whole Foods. I would like to shout out to myfatfact's other co-founder this week, Abhishek Singh Shek. We wouldn't be anywhere without you. You're an IT department all on your own. You truly are brilliant. You've done so much for all of us. You're really going to push health knowledge. You've done a lot, buddy, and we all thank you. All 60 members of this team are truly grateful. So be sure to like us on the book and follow us on Twitter, myfatfact, all one word.